This is Computing Up, conversations about computation writ large, with Michael Littman and Dave Ackley. This episode was recorded June 13th, 2022.
Hello and welcome, Dave. How you been?
I've been all right. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm just coming off of the big reinforcement learning conference, RLDM, which we held in Providence, so my home base. And that was really cool because I think, in addition to getting to hang out with my reinforcement learning researcher peeps, I think it may have been one of the largest gatherings of people who listen to our podcast.
Huh.
Now,
well,
mind you,
cool.
As far as I know, there was only 3 people there who listened
to the podcast.
That's a lot. But having them all in one place is remarkable.
And they talked to you. Did any of them talk to each other? I mean, is it that you met them sequentially?
I met them sequentially. I mean, there are people who, for example, my former graduate student, Dave Abel, tells me that he listens to the show, and he was there. He gave a great talk. He handled a very difficult question from Rich Sutton, one of the founders of the whole field, who basically got up. He got up to the microphone and he said, "So, that was a great talk and all, but why should I care?" And the audience went, "Ooh." But Dave, in addition to being a fantastic computer scientist, he got his master's degree in philosophy while he was working with me, and I think his undergrad is also he studied philosophy. And so, obnoxious.
He should
comments.
Land on his feet.
Yeah, it's totally fine. So he's like, well, because we talk about reward. And that's obviously very central to what we do in reinforcement learning. And we're just trying to understand it better. And I can tell you more about it, but let's do that offline.
Ooh.
Boom. And it was just, I would have just blathered on, gone around in circles and made a fool out of myself. But he was like, it's because it's interesting and important. If you have more that you want to talk about, we can talk about it later.
And did Rich buy that?
They took the microphone away, so I guess.
It was bought by.
That's right. De facto bought.
But
he did.
Rich is nice and so forth. So presumably, hopefully, they could have chatted later if there was something more pushback that Rich needed to make.
Rich doesn't try to tear people down, but he has a particular perspective, and if your perspective doesn't match his, he wants to know why he should care. Because his whole worldview is so deeply thought out. I feel like in high school he came up with the idea of temporal difference learning, and he's just been on that track ever since.
Yeah.
And that's impressive. I'm much more easily distracted.
Well, I don't know. Here we are in Computing Up. It's about the big picture. So, if you want to focus on a big picture and you choose to be laser focused on one thing since high school, those may not be completely compatible, or you might have to go so far in that you come back around. Whereas a certain amount of distraction, a certain amount of flitting from thing to thing might be a better way to sample an extremely diverse space rather than just going deep. I just want to be a proponent for breadth. It is possible to do that. But I
would really want my community to have both kinds of people in it, right? If there's nobody like Rich who's just gone all the way, drilled to the core of the earth, then we're all flitters, and I think we need representatives for some good ideas.
Right. And the risk, so the risk of the rifle shot never changes focus is that, you just drill yourself into a teeny tiny little hole, and you get really good at absolutely nothing. And the problem with flitting is that you never actually find a hole. You never actually find a cohesion. So, absolutely. I saw some tweets from the RLDM. That was the conference that in Providence. And there was also this thing about you getting this big award. That wasn't related to that conference, this mid-career, kind of thing. So congratulations. What exactly is that?
Yeah, so it's an award named for John McCarthy, one of the founders of the field of artificial intelligence. And so they have kind of 3 stages of awards that they give out. There's Computers in Thought, which is for a beginning career researcher, and then this one, which is a mid-career, and then there's a kind of capper, What you did, all of what you did, that was great. Good job with that.
And what's that one called? Is that some another name?
I should know
Oh,
this, but it's something like the Research Excellence Award.
okay, all right. So it's not like they picked somebody who's better than John McCarthy and use his name for the senior
That
award or
would be
something
awkward,
like
wouldn't
that.
it? Yeah, it's like
Exactly,
you're as good
exactly.
as this person was.
Yeah, right. And now here's the I don't know the
Like much better
Norbert
person.
Wiener Award. Yeah, like that. Well, I saw a quote about why John McCarthy invented the term AI,
Hmm.
and it was in significant part, at least that was the sense of this quote,
Hmm.
because he wanted to get away from cybernetics, and
Yeah.
he didn't want to have to deal with or argue with Norbert Wiener, who
Yeah.
apparently was cheese of cybernetics and perhaps a prickly sort of person, I suppose, at least from John McCarthy's point of view. So he figured, let's make up our own name, and then here we are,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that.
Now,
And
I think this was talked about a bit in Brian Christian's book. Is that is
could
that
be
possible?
that
You might
could
have seen
that
it there. So
yeah.
Brian Christian, author
The
and friend
most
of the
human
show, as it were.
human.
He
Yes,
he actually
absolutely.
was at the conference, and so I got to see
Cool.
him there, and he got to present his perspective at a workshop organized by Dave Abel, who I mentioned
Uh-huh.
just before,
And
and
so
so that was
Brian
cool.
was talking about alignment problem thoughts,
He was
just general.
the workshop that he spoke in was called Agency, and so it was really kind of the philosophical view of like, well, what are these reinforcement learners that we're building? What do they do? What's them? What's their environment? How do you just, I don't know, kind of working out the pieces.
Right, right. Well, I think agency is super important, and I feel like I was sort of fairly late to the agency show. Other people were talking about it before I really got it, like that.
Yeah, though, I mean, all throughout your career, like decision making at least was part of it. It wasn't just let me memorize some patterns or let me generalize some patterns. It was like I'm going to do the I'm going to what you're saying. I'm going
Yeah,
to build a machine that actually makes a decision, does something.
right. That's true. And the whole idea of search, the whole idea of creating a machine that will look for stuff that you don't know if it'll find it. The whole idea of heuristic search, I guess that's
Mm,
the real key, as opposed to 2 + 2 = 4. And no matter how many times you do it, 2 + 2 is going to equal 4. But if you say, search for something that has a greater than 100 on this function, then depending on how it does it, maybe it'll find it, maybe it won't, maybe it'll come up with different answers different times. All of that is giving away, from the point of view of top-down control,
mm,
it's giving it away. So that you could call it agency, whatever you could call it, but the
mm.
control that you gave up, where did it go? I guess that's what it comes. Well, it must have gone into the program or the machine, the
Right.
physical system that's running that heuristic search program that's coming up with its answer, or failing to, whatever it is. And so I guess to me, the more heuristic you're willing to do, the more search you're willing to delegate, the more agency you've given away.
Right, right.
Uh,
Or
uh,
the more agency that the program has accrued to itself. Yeah,
Absolutely. And
yeah.
those, I don't know if there's any kind of zero sum agency in the universe, or
I
if
see.
by
Oh,
creating,
interesting.
I mean, the more you give it away, the less you have, in the sense that, and this is actually probably pretty good, because in the sense that, if you're just sitting there staring at the machine, waiting for the answer, you've kind of given away all your agency. You're not going out for ice cream at that point. You're just sitting there waiting for the damn thing to, like that. So you've lost your ability to do anything,
Yeah,
until the thing that you gave agency to gives back whatever it gives back, and then you have to decide. Now, of course, most of the time you're not going to actually do that. You're going to try to branch away and come back, to maintain some agency.
right.
But that's compatible with this idea that if the decisions you wish to make depend on stuff that's outside you, and then I don't know if that's a problematic notion of where does you end and the heuristic search machine begin, but there it is, versus, you know, cast the bread on the water, whatever. If anybody knows value of a function that's greater than functions that's greater than 100 on some set of inputs, that'd be great. Tweet back at me, academic heuristic search Twitter, whatever the hell it is. Anyway.
Well, okay. So there was a moment at the conference that kind of I was having some of these thoughts, and that was. So I'm worried about agency in the sense of giving over too much control to the machine and what that does to us as people, especially in the context of social media and like recommendation systems. Essentially, the idea that systems are on our behalf, they're trying to give us stuff that maybe we want. And I think a lot of the systems,
like our feed,
our feed. That's right.
The sequence of stuff we get on Twitter, Facebook, whatever it is.
Right. Where the old days we would go to the magazine rack at the corner and we'd buy a magazine, and we would choose that. That was some agency. We didn't get to pick which articles would appear in it, but we could choose if we're going to buy Field and Stream or Inside Sports. We'd have some ability to choose, and it's that I feel like we've given a lot of that away.
Because there's only 3 magazines now. There's only Facebook magazine and Twitter magazine and Truth Social magazine.
Right.
Or whatever.
Right. And so one of the talks at the conference was about, let's see if we can learn from a person, like a reinforcement learning system that was going to learn from a person just by watching their brainwaves or maybe their facial expressions. So like, it's just too much effort to have to tell the machine what to do. We can just figure out what you want by watching you and then do what you actually really deeply want and didn't know how to put into words. And that's a funny case for this agency story, because I actually think it's less agency, even though the system is trying to do my biology seems to want. It's not what my conscious, like, considering self wants. It's sort of what my monkey brain wants. And that doesn't feel very agentic to me, even though I think their goal is to get at, do what I want without having me to put effort into it.
So wait, so the reduced agency in that example for you is on the part of the AI system that people are trying to develop, or is on the part of Michael, the user?
Right. So I feel like
if
the system is trying to, well, I'm wondering how this fits with your zero sum idea is that I feel like I've given away my agency by having the system try to infer my preferences and then act on my, sometimes they call it revealed preferences. It's like, what I'm acting as if I want such and such. So let's just do that for Michael.
Let's just give you such and such.
Right. And so I think the designers of these systems are feeling like they're not taking my agency. They're only doing what they think I actually want. But I didn't actually say that I wanted that. And I don't know that I really did want that in an explicit conscious way.
Right.
And so I feel like I have lost something and I don't know who's gained it.
Well, but I think that where you ended just there is absolutely the key point. Who has gained it? And so imagine this technology exists, that in some fashion. To me, whether that technology is good or bad depends entirely on who fields it. If there's, and presumably the talk that you're referring to didn't dwell on that, this is going to be a Google product or a Facebook product or whatever the hell it is. You're just talking about the mechanics of it. How would it actually work? How would it get the clues? How would it distinguish a cranky eye from a skeptical eye, and so on and so forth? But to me, the first question is where is the benefit going to go? And until you answer that, you can say nothing really important about the agency transfer and when it is. So, I mean, if you had, in fact, some closely held kind of hardware that was just yours, just so totally yours, that, and it was looking at you all the time and trying to figure out what the hell are you thinking? Is there something that I need to do? Is there something that I could do? Could I make a joke and make Michael smile? Whatever it is, they're thinking about that shit all the time because they're your best computer buddy. And they really are, and they will die for you. And they do not have a backdoor connection to Google. They do not ship all your stuff. All the computing happens within 1 meter of your body, and your stuff won't talk to anybody. And at that point, if it's that kind of personal computing, really personal computing, not the BS that we have today, then I'd be tempted to
Mm.
think about deploying something that was trying to anticipate my needs and so forth. And because even if they screwed up, there would be this fundamental, it was with our best interests in mind. And it would be like, if I could explain to you why it is that that was a mistake, then best computer buddy would go, I get it, Dave. Okay, great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like that. And it would be a whole other thing.
Right. So
And
part of my the issue that I have with the current technology is that sometimes it infers my preferences, and I don't want those preferences to be what it thinks are my preferences, and I have no way to unroll that. I have no way to
yeah,
back out of it, and it just rolls. So like Redbox just gives me these ads for movies all the time that I'm like, I know why you're doing that. I clicked on that picture, but
right.
like it was just a moment of weakness. I
Exactly.
wasn't really thinking
Exactly.
about it. Please don't give me that anymore. And
Right.
I can't tell it that by any other way than just unsubscribing like deleting my account and starting
Yeah.
fresh.
Well, that's a great point. I mean, we are, I have problems with Minsky, but, this sort of society of mind idea that we have these conflicting impulses and competing stuff all within us, of which various factions may be in control of any bit of behavior that we emit. And I find the same feeling that, if, uh, in a moment of weakness or just whatever, I click on XYZ and now but I really, I'm ashamed of myself from having clicked on XYZ, whatever it is, like that. And now the algorithm is relentlessly hitting me with XIZ2, XI. So I have to use my superego. I have to use my willpower much, much more just to say, no, God damn it. That was one moment of weakness. I'm a better person than this, that kind of thing. And if it's going to be the case that, well, and then, the other side of it is that the people that are doing this to us are all trying to sell stuff to us or sell us to something else, which means they're going to categorize us in buckets that are economically valuable to them or to somebody else. And they're not going to categorize us into buckets that we necessarily want to be categorized in on our own. And they're going to then take consequences from what bucket we're in as far as what they're going to feed to us next. And I was talking to somebody about, the junk mail that I get.
Mm.
I get a tremendous amount of junk mail because I still run my own email server. So I do not have Google's defenses, Gmail's defenses for all this stuff. So, I get this pretty unfiltered stuff. I have a filtering that happens locally, but my God. And, the internet has just gotten myself that it has these beliefs about me that are completely wrong, that it will not give up, and you cannot just go unsubscribe because I've tried it, like that. So I get all this industrial food processing machinery ads.
Mm.
Are you interested in this great new line for vegetable preparation that I don't even know what it is? Or sometimes it's even the reverse. It's like, do you have a Hoppenfusser 3700? Let me give you an offer, like that. It's really quite specific. And it's like, where the hell did they get this? And
Well,
anyway,
you did run an industrial farm for a couple of years. That's probably the
yeah, that must be it. And I might get back into that. Anyway,
that's the odds that they're playing. So okay, so then I take as a summary of what we just talked about as we're still maintaining the possibility that agency is a zero sum thing, and if companies are helping us, but at the same time using that to pitch us stuff, they did take some of that agency, or we gave away some of that agency, and so it still exists. It's just on their side now, and
that's right.
we can't stop it because they're the agent now.
Well, to the degree that they are running a computation that we are depending on, and by pointing our eyeballs at our feed, we are confessing that's true. We're saying, entertain me, show me my friends, and me, whatever the hell it is, waste my time for me, like that. Then we're giving them exactly that control. We're giving them, by paying attention. That means we're not we're giving up the opportunity cost of all the other things that we could be attending to at that moment, and instead we are saying whatever Twitter says next to me, that's what I'm going to see. And I mean, to me, this cycles back to something that you and I have talked about many times, and I feel like I've never quite captured the thing that's important to me, and maybe this is another take on it, about random numbers generation. That so when I go to a random number generator and say, give me a random number from 1 to 10, I give up agency there. I give up agency to know which number it's going to be. I give up agency to say, no, it's got to be 5, like that. And I give it to the random number generator. And how do I know they're really being random? I mean, it's an act of faith on my part to say that I trust this thing as being random because, it's connected to quantum universe, blah. Say, well, how do you know it's connected to quantum universe, blah? You just read the label on it. It says quantum universe, blah, on the cover. Or if you open it up and dig into it, and then it all becomes part of you. Then if you go deep enough into the thing, and then then you're not asking it. Then you're saying you're pointing at the xenon source or whatever radioactive things you use to make a quantum random number generator. I don't even know. And that's where your trust then ends. I trust in quantum mechanics that it says, God damn it, it's really, really random. There's no hidden variable. There's nothing behind the scene. But it's an act of faith on your part, whatever it is. And so you say, well, okay, maybe it's a good act of faith, but my point is you gave up agency.
Well, in particular, if you kind of pre-commit to a plan that says, if the number comes up this way, I'm going to do this. If the number comes up this way, I'm going to do that. Then you hand it over. It gives you the number, and now my hands are tied.
That's right. That's right. And so there's, who gets credit for doing that action that you do? Well, you set up the framework, you made the mapping between numbers and actions, but you don't actually take responsibility for which number, like that. And so to me, that is the sort of the philosophical core of randomness, is this giving up of control, that you're asking the random source to decide for you. The belief is that what you really want is you want to use it to get an honest sample of some subspace, of some hyper subspace. If you want 3 bits and you want each of them to be on or off with probability 50%, so you get a uniform sample of that 3-bit subspace, the 7 possible choices, and you go to the random number generator and hope to get that, the 8 possible choices.
Thanks.
Yeah. I saw the eye roll, so I had to read.
It wasn't an eye roll. It was an eye roll, but it was like, wait a second, how did he get 7? Okay.
7. Yeah. Anyway, 8. And all right. Anyway, but that was a side issue, except that to me, the random source. So you can ask somebody a question and hope to get a useful answer. And there's all sorts of notions of, expertise, or this agent is useful for these kind of answers. And to me, that all the way down at the bottom, one of them is, asking a random thing to give you a random answer, is still a strong thing. It's a giving up of control, giving up of agency. Now,
are you we haven't said the word free will, but I feel like there's maybe a parallel, if not an identity there. Are you thinking about them as essentially the same thing, or is there a distinction you would make?
I don't know. I mean, one of my old slogans was, free will exists, but it's finite. The more you use it, the less you have, in the sense that you have to live with your choices. And if you haven't chosen, then you can say, oh, it's completely up to me, like that. But then you choose, and then you choose, and then you choose, and then, you're cast in concrete, and you have very few choices left, like that.
And that finiteness is what it reminds me very much of this discussion of saying the zero
sumness. Yeah. Well, and to circle back around to the zero sumness, I wasn't even trying to make a strong case that I believe it's zero sum. And in particular, if I can take mere sand, and reorganize it into silicon chips, using the tiniest little bit of magic sprinkles, on it, and get it to be, now a machine that takes input and makes decisions and takes actions such that it tries to preserve itself. It tries to homeostatically regulate its operation to keep its power supply going, and so on and so forth. That feels to me like there's a new agent now that was not in the universe before, when it was just mere sand and a sprinkling of dopants that were not put in that exact person. So, by the fact of me creating that machine, whether it's just a ball with water in it that I put over a fire and it makes steam, and the steam spins out the thing rotates, like the first machine from Hero, was it Hero, way back in Greece? Anyway, all the way up to the most subtle AI super chip tensor M2 flow bombs that we have today. That's all about creating technology, or and for that matter, again, having kids.
I was going to, exactly.
Increasing the population like that. It seems to me the agency in the universe is increasing. It's tied to the amount of life rather than being zero sum, like that. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, living systems are systems which do work to preserve themselves, and agency is pretty closely tied to that. Choosing to do certain work and versus another work. You can choose to do work that does not preserve yourself, and sing your death song and go into battle knowing it's going to be your last moments. But okay, if that's what you choose to do, then
that was your choice.
Super honorable in some sense, like that. But we would hope that most of the time, like that, one would be doing the basic work to just keep going, like that. So,
yeah.
What the hell should we talk about today?
I don't know. Like, we don't have a guest today, and we just had almost the whole show just now, which I thought was fun and interesting. I was going to ask you. So I was going through some of my old notes when we first started podcasting, and noticed that there were some comments that you had made that I was like, oh, I should ask him about this at some point. And okay. one of them was, some of my research is involved with the Internet of Things, which I got involved with specifically because I taught I believe really deeply in the power of computation and how it can be used to empower people, that if you take advantage of it, you get this external brain thing that can help you with your decision making and making things happen in the real world. And that seems very powerful, but mostly it's just us computer scientists who do that, right? People use computers, but they're not really delegating interesting problems to them. They're just using the computer as almost like an existing tool. And so I taught this intro class to non-computer scientists, and I thought, okay, ta-da, they're now empowered. And I followed up with some of them years later. I'm like, so has this changed your life? Have you been using these ideas to get to be more powerful? And they're like, no, I never took another computer science class. I'm like, no, you missed the whole point. This wasn't about preparing you for another computer science class. It's about preparing you to do things in the world. And presumably you're doing things in the world. So this is supposed to be relevant, but by then they've already walked away. So the conversation ends. And it leaves me to think, okay, well, maybe part of the problem is a lot of the examples that we use, people have trouble thinking how that would influence their life in any way. Like, I'll teach you how to compute a factorial. Great. I don't really need that.
Right. Yeah. I use that every day.
Right. I mean, you do, but you don't think about it. Like, there's factorials all around us, but you don't have to be conscious of it. So I thought, okay, well, what if people could program like their world? Right? They could program their lights. They could program their car. They could program their blender. They could program their, if they had something to program that actually mattered to them, that wasn't purely in the computational sphere, but actually was in the real world.
Okay,
that would be the gateway.
Let me push back just so I understand. So you're saying you did this introductory course for non-computer people, but it was on a regular computer. They were learning things like factorial and while loops or whatever the hell it is, like that. And that was not changing their lives in the cases where you managed to get some feedback. So you wanted to try something different. Go ahead.
Right. And so I did one seminar where we kind of explored the question, and people at least thought about how this might work. We ultimately started to build IoT things. This is in the early 2000s. Um, a lot of work that I did with my colleague Blaise at the University of Chicago, though then we were both at Rutgers when we started doing this, was actually building the machines, building the IoT devices, because they didn't exist. There wasn't anything that people could program, but we knew that it was possible to make such a thing. So we made lamps and a toaster oven and a menorah, a programmable menorah. So we did a whole bunch of stuff. In at almost exactly at that time, IoT devices started to be mass marketed. So you can buy light bulbs that you can control from your smartphone. You can buy door
Sure.
locks. You can buy. I bought a dishwashing machine, and so they're much more common now. And
Yes.
I always thought that would be like the happy end goal. These devices would be professionally made instead of what we
Hacked
did, which
up.
was like soldering Arduinos into actual lamps that we bought in the store. And this would be great. This was going to change everything. But not only has it not changed other people's lives, I think if anything, it changed me into thinking this was a terrible idea from the onset, because
Yeah.
all the programmable devices that are in my house are terrible, and they
Yeah.
make my life worse. And I'm so sad, because this was supposed to change. This was supposed to finally convince people, yes, we can all be computer scientists, even if we're not being computer scientists. And
Right.
instead, I'm just sad, and I spent a lot on crappy appliances.
Well, that makes me think at least three things. I mean, it's about IoT. That's one thought. It's about ownership of technology, which loops back a little bit to what we talked about earlier today. And I don't even remember the third one, but it'll come around whenever there's time for it, like that. So, yeah, actually, it's about my own hacks versus professional. That was the third one, technology stuff having to do with our phones, because we had a hacked up telephone thing that we used to use. That
Who's
was
we in this?
this is Elena and my wife and I. Like that, we had, since we had two phones in two different places, because we had two different houses, because we were
Yes.
met as older folks, like that. So at one point I had built a some hardware based on little portable little computers you could buy, industrial computers, and a bunch of open source software called Asterisk that you could make your own phone processing stuff and so on and so forth. And it was wonderful, like that. And it did exactly what we wanted. And it allowed us to, pick up calls at the other place that would ring in the other place with a special ring. So we could tell that this was actually a call to the other one, and we could pick it up and say, yes, I'm definitely in Albuquerque, or whatever it is. And so on and so forth. And it was great. It was great. It worked for years. And then, the weak link was the hardware interface to the phone system, because the phone system is a nasty, nasty electrical environment. There, lightning strikes and all kinds of surges and horrible stuff. And at one point, the interface got burned out, and had to replace it. Could no longer replace it. Product was gone, and there was no drop-in replacement for it at all. And eventually, it looked like there was a possibility of getting a bunch of other stuff that could be cobbled together in a different way. But by that point, the hill climb to redevelop that whole thing was too big a mountain for me to want to budget that much sysadmin time to figure out how to do it. So we don't have it. It's dead. It's been dead for years now. And what reminds me of it is like, why can't I just buy that? And in fact, there are a million things out there that do similar things to what I was just describing, that was just for the Ackley family, that worked great. But they all suck, because they're all from rent-seeking companies that are trying to get $3 a month to provide this service, which is, a tiny, horrible little value add. I mean, strictly much worse than what I had. In addition, they want money for it. And so it's like, screw you. But the point is, they can drive the production of the hardware, like that. And so I was just feeding off of a previous ecosystem of hardware that they hadn't figured out how they could ball it up tighter so that it wouldn't really work on separate pieces, like that.
So that's really interesting. So there's two things that Okay, so normally I think that one of the reasons that the companies don't do this, like provide that infrastructure, is because we're not ready. Like we as a population, not enough people can do what you, Dave Ackley, can do to do the programming necessary to make it work in your environment. But you're telling a slightly different story, which I think is much scarier. That's already kind of a scary story because like it won't
Yeah.
happen until everybody learns to program. But of course, no one's going to learn to program if there's nothing to program. So there's a chicken and egg. But I feel like what you're arguing is the business model for creating this kind of
Yes.
hardware is got to be rent seeking. It's got to be a kind of thing where you have to buy a subscription, which
Yeah.
is not the model that we should have. It should
Yes.
be like, here's a thing. Make it do what you want. It should come like a big track used to the 1980s,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
little trucky thing. It's like, we'll give you the hardware. Now you can program it to do the things you want to do.
That's
And you're saying that that may not happen because there's just not enough in business incentive to make it so.
well, yeah, and one of the paper I submitted years ago to a security workshop that didn't get accepted was talking about dealing with how could you incentivize, which I hate that word, how could you incent
Mm,
manufacturers?
that doesn't sound good either.
How could
How
you
could you create an
encourage?
incentive?
Yeah, how could you encourage manufacturers to build hardware that was actually good for the user and was not a rent-seeking device for some central distributor? And the idea was that number one, it was going to have to be more expensive because the rent that you were being able to, just like buying, renting a high end smartphone from your cell phone carrier in exchange for giving them rent monthly lease payments for ever, versus buying the thing outright. And it's the same kind of thing. And this in the story in the paper called the path to best effort, it actually happened by going really small. It happened by being like a kid's toy. That of course there was going to be no rent because nobody's going to. Well,
Mm,
there are a bunch of kids' toys out there that are trying to make your kids be renters within the party universe of the My Little Pony or whatever the hell it is. Tamagotchi universe, for only $3 a month. Ask your parents, like that. Everybody's trying to do it. But in the story, this was a one-off little toy that you would own, and you would interact with it, and it would become totally customized to you, and it would recognize the way you acted and wouldn't respond to anybody else, and so on. And that was the path that led to people actually developing hardware which would bond with the buyer, the owner, the user, and become in fact completely standoffish to the manufacturer, like that. But that was my fantasy. That was my happy fantasy, trying to
that's a
find a
happy
path,
fantasy. Yeah.
trying to find a path to that sort of thing. But I see very little evidence uh, that. Well, I mean, what we need is in the computation writ large is we need society to appreciate that sort of thing better, and to have it be more obvious that yeah, we're getting all this. Twitter is free and Google search is free and so on and so forth. uh,
Gmail.
um, Gmail, absolutely. But we should be more sensitive to the costs of it. And as it takes a lot of skill to write a lot of code that does an amazing new thing. And that has to get covered somehow. But that's for the first one. The second one, the second video chat app, the second machine learning app, the second, whatever, much, much, much cheaper to produce. Because not because you're using the code literally, but because of number one, knowing it's possible, and number two, seeing how it could work out there, and then boiling it down. And so after a year or two, you get open source versions of all of these things that you can play with. Now again, serious learning curve. No, but if we had people that were more sensitive to that we were expecting to say, well, we have to be able to then gradually layer over to the open source version, and the ones that want to keep seeking rent from us are going to have to keep wowing us with whole new categories of amazingness to keep us with them. Then maybe there could be some hope. Maybe there could be some hope that there could be sort of a commons. A social, societal commons of behavior that is programmable, that is not completely controlled by the center, not completely controlled by Facebook, Google, Amazon, whatever it happens to be. That's the fantasy. I don't know if it's really true or not. When I was younger, I was much more willing to believe that computing could save the day. The older I get, the more that looks like quite a lift. Well, I haven't given up. And actually, having these conversations and trying to get the word out. I mean, I used to think, bullshit talks and code walks. No, that's backwards. Code talks and bullshit walks. I don't know, something like that. That just
the point is
the running
code is real, and it will win the day because it's
running code is real. Otherwise, it's just BS. And so people can BS all day long about free will and consciousness and whatever they want. But you deliver a demo, something that actually runs. And this is what I said, in one of the updates recently, that when you're doing top-down science and you're saying this makes sense and this is and so forth, and you get a new result, what you get is a truth. But when you're doing bottom up, building bottom up, and you're giving demo after demo, what you get is a capability that, I see this demo. I could do that demo. I could get the same stuff that they've got because hopefully it needs to be open source. So these large language model things that you can't do, it's not really a demo. In fact, posting those pictures that come out of DALL-E 2 or whatever, is not a demo, because it doesn't actually give me the capability to do that. Except we could imagine that it's just not giving me the capability because, well, they're afraid what I'm going to ask it to draw, and they're going to try to do rent seeking because we know what's coming.
That's the business model. Yeah, exactly.
That's the business model. Anyway. I don't know where we got to here.
Okay, so you mentioned three things: the hack versus professional, which I think we covered, right. Ownership of technology, and IoT.
Right, and to me, it always goes back to the ownership of the technology, and I am really unwilling to spend much time having nerd out discussions about technology until we've established that, who benefits, cui bono, like that. And, that's different than where I was. And so IoT's awfulness, is in large part because of the ownership dynamics, how the bits move. So you get these.
So just to be clear, like what's an IoT? What's an example of an IoT in this?
Well, okay, so we've got the light bulbs. In our house, we have those color changing light bulbs.
Philips Hue, perhaps.
Philips Hue, and some of them are knockoff, some of them are official, but they all speak that protocol. And so that's an IoT example. But then it's everything from Fitbits and health trackers and really smartphones. At this point, it's hard to really distinguish them from every other IoT bit, except as a matter of degree or a matter of history. And then there are these, I don't know if Amazon is still doing it, but for a while they were doing like these buttons. Like you could get a Tide detergent button that you'd stick to your washing machine, and every time you pushed it, more Tide detergent would show up at your door 3 days later or whatever the hell it is, that. And so that, to me, that is the poster child of IoT awfulness, like that. And, to say, okay, but it's so convenient, the 3 times a year that you need to buy buy laundry detergent, great, like that. And all the rest of the time, it's a piece of hardware that's network connected, that's not beholden to you, that who the fuck knows how many sensors there are in it because they're so cheap at this point. There's probably a microphone inside the Tide button because it just came with the IoT chip that has all of this crap integrated on it because it's cheaper to not have it.
Cheaper to have it than not. Yeah.
Cheaper to have it than not. That's right. And so on. And again, if these buttons were beholden to you, that would be one thing. But if they were beholden to you, you wouldn't have them because nobody would have paid to develop them. Nobody would have paid to get them into your house, like that.
Okay, but you feel the same way about the color changing light bulbs?
I do. And in our particular case, the root device that you get, which broadcasts on the local wireless signal on this XB signal to actually control the bulbs, and then the bulbs talk to each other to get more distance, and it also talks to the internet so that it can talk to the Philips upstream controller to allow you to use your app. So, even though your app and the light are like 2 feet away, the communication path goes through Philips in whoever the hell knows where Philips is, and then back to you. So they get to see all of the clicks and so forth. And that's awful. And so, so I don't do that. The last light on the Philips Hue Controller, the one that's blinking that says yes, I'm connected to the mothership, just never goes solid on mine because I block the IP addresses and I don't do it. So because it had to fall back on something that you could do even if the internet was down. I mean, they don't have to do that, but thank the Lord they did. So as far as my little light bulb color changer, it thinks the internet is temporarily down, so it can't get in touch, but it'll still accept commands that are properly formatted that arrive on the local internet. So I have, an old, trashy old little laptop that I don't use for anything anymore, that its sole job in our house is to send the color commands to the root hub, which then broadcasts them to the lights and they change their things. And so like the cats know what time it is because they know that the hall light turns blue at 6 a.m., which means it's really time for breakfast now. So they can go find Dave, like that. I mean, they have plenty good internal clocks too, except they would usually get up around 4:30 and start, wanting breakfast. But if the light turns
it's part of
blue,
a negotiation, really. The lights
that's right. It's like, light, right, and blue light, buddy, like that. So that's my compromise as far as the
great use of IoT technology. I really like that because the animals are really smart. Like the pets get it, but they need structure, they need consistency, and this is such a cool way of providing consistency.
Well, I that wasn't the purpose, but then I just sort of gradually realized, that I had basically programmed the lights to change colors, different lights, different colors, on the hour mostly, like that, even at night, even in the bedroom, but they're all very dim, color shifts and so on and so forth. And it's like, they're totally going to know about that, because, if it's a consistent signal, they'll pick up on it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
especially if it's associated with food in some way, because there's a lot of motivated pattern
exactly.
finding.
Absolutely. And so again, IoT is awful because they are all internet connected. They all interpose someone who is not beholden to you in the middle of the communication paths between you and your things, like that. And so in this case of the Philips Hue thing, I kind of managed to chop them out of the loop. But they make it harder and harder. And there's a lot of things that won't work at all, or at least until someone has reverse engineered a Fitbit or whatever the hell it is, to let you download your Fitbit data without having it go through them for marketing purposes. Then, okay. So again,
so there's definitely an incentive of the companies to keep the data flowing through them because they feed on that data, right? That's actually a valuable resource to them.
Sure.
but it's also, isn't it also the case that it is the path of least resistance? Like, it's easier to architect a system where things are centralized than it is to somehow sell this device. Like, they're not going to sell it to, non-Dave with the idea of, okay, you need to set up your own server, which you need to, keep on the internet and responding to certain kinds of, open this port. Like, there's so much that you have to do on the your house side to make something non-centralized work, that it wouldn't even really be practical. Even if they were desperate to make it happen, it would be really difficult to make it happen. Do you agree with that?
No, if they were
Okay.
desperate, if they were desperate to make it happen, then you make it simple the same way you make anything else simple. You say, okay, you're going to need a home controller, and it's going to be controlling lots of different things, so we can amortize the cost of developing the home controller. But because we are, ethical people, we're going to design the home controller to be beholden to you and nobody else, like that. And so you're going to have to do a bonding protocol. It's going to want to get to know you when you first purchase the thing and pull the wire out of it that says begin bonding protocol, like that. And it is not going to talk to the internet. It is not. It's going to have a private IP address, and it's never going to try to talk to it.
I mean, being on the internet is really useful if you want to control your lights from far away. But
Right.
I don't think you're saying that. I think you're saying there's no central corporate hub that it's going to be
Right.
beholden to in constant contact with.
The system is complete. The system will do all the behavior that it's designed to do, even if there's a Faraday cage around your entire house, or whatever the scope of operation of this particular controller is going to be. And we are going to stake our reputation, the manufacturers of the home controller, on that being true. And we're going to assert it that there's no internet connection. In fact, if there's any sign of an internet connection, it will report to you. Seems like somebody might have connected something in the stop, that kind of thing. And they're going to get value. That company is going to get value by being believed. And as long as they aren't cracked and they are not seen to be the thin edge of the wedge of people coming in and taking over your agency, by exfiltrating information about you that allows people to then counter program against you, and which is what marketing essentially is.
Okay, so this is a really interesting perspective, because you're saying that it's a moral and ethical issue, that and it's an imperative that they, when they sell you a thing, that it's beholden to you. I feel like there's even a word for it. Is that what fiduciary responsibility means?
Fiduciary would be one possible thing. I mean, generally machinery doesn't have the enough agency to be a fiduciary.
Yeah. No, but we're talking about systems that kind of do, and the idea is that
right.
they should be, that they are necessarily on your side, and it would be, and to the extent that there's exfiltrating, that's another great word, that they're sneaking data out of your home for someone else's use, even if they make it so that it's okay, but we'll check with you first. Right. But the thing is, you can't say no, right? You can say no, and then you basically lose all the functionality. So that's not cool. That
doesn't count at all. Yeah. And in fact, you might have to beg and plead, please, I've fallen and I can't get up. I beg of you, send a message out onto the internet, please. I'm here for you. What can I do for you? I will never talk to anybody else. No, please, I'm going to die. That's the way it ought to be. It's not, this
That's a
bullshit,
terrible story, though.
this bullshit opt-out thing.
He died, but at least he died with a clean conscience.
Well, he died without anybody being able to market to him about it. So, I see you've died. Funerals.com is having a sale.
Right. People in your area who've died really appreciate this new product.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, but just the point is shifting the default from, either you can't turn it off, the internet connection, you can't turn it off, or if you do turn it off, the thing barely won't work, to there's absolutely no internet connection at all, or if there is, the machine is incredibly reluctant to use it,
Right, and it's
like
only
that.
on your behalf. It's not.
Right,
It's not
right.
to contact or
Well,
sneak data
and
out.
again, this does not lead to trolley problem ethical conundrums, because we are going to know that our machinery has limitations. Our machinery is not artificial intelligence, or it's not artificial general intelligence, or artificial really super duper general intelligence, or whatever's coming next. It's just
Super intelligence.
it's just a machine that has its dependencies, its categorization. It sees things a certain way, and it will have certain things it can do, and it will do them under whatever it is. And it might make a mistake. It might, intending to do something on your behalf, it might not be what you want, like that, because you were trying to keep it a surprise, and it told your wife about it, or whatever it is. And so that's okay. I am not talking about we have to solve the philosophical notion of meaning in order to know what being on your side is, or what
Hmm.
being loyal is. The machinery is going to be loyal in terms of what it knows, and it will be able, in principle, to explain to you how the things it chose to do were loyal things, even if that ends up being a mistake, like that.
Right.
And we're going to have a combination of, don't give it too much power, like,
Uh-huh.
don't connect it to the solenoid on the gun, on the trigger of the gun, like that.
Ah,
So that in case someone tries to come in, it can defend me with lethal force. That seems like that's probably a bad idea.
to step too far.
Step too far. So we have a combination of its limited range of actions and a combination of its limited range of inputs. But within that, we need to have the ability to think, I did this because I thought I knew you would need it. You had told me blah, 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 blah. And it can give you whatever argument it is that led to it being not only a good idea, greater than zero, but so far greater than zero that it was actionable and it chose to execute it, that kind of thing.
And so the only way this will ever come to pass is if people, consumers, right, perceive an advantage to doing the thing that's actually ethical on their behalf. Because I didn't have this perspective before this conversation. I don't think that it's widely understood, right? That I would much prefer an internet connected light bulb that was on my
Beholden to
side,
me.
that
That's
served
right.
me, than
Right.
something that actually served anybody else, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
people
and
get upset that the Nest thermostat is in cahoots with the local energy provider,
right.
and will actually turn down the thermostat to try to save energy, which, like, I'm on board with that as a goal, but it
But you
does
want to
feel a
be
little
able to,
behind my back. Yeah.
yeah, and your home is your castle, except for the following seven regions: the furnace, the lights, the,
Yeah. 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 I
like
see.
that, like that. And I think, society doesn't, I mean, for me as a computer scientist, for me as a developer and a programmer, the difference between the first system and the second system, the difference in cost between producing the first system and the second system is so enormous, that, people say, okay, well, these modern AI devices with 500 million parameters and stuff like that, nobody could do that on their own, like that. But already, we're getting these, mini versions and all that kind of stuff, which are doing related things in a much smaller scale. And that is in large part because the second one is so much easier. And so I want to think, if we wanted it, if we could, build a clamor and get developers and computer scientists, engineers, all the stuff to want it, number one, that we could start to think, how to build your home controller, how to build your absolutely out of the box home server that is going to be very limited at first compared to everything that you could possibly get, but that's because it's for you, and its focus is on being really robust, because it's not going to get updates, it's not going to get replaced every 2 years by rental contracts. It's going to be your thing that's going to be with you for the duration, and start building out from there. Really how to get that, I don't know. And there would be a increasing pushback from the landlords of technology,
Yeah.
if it actually started to make some progress like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. Well, so we didn't think of anything to talk about this time, but what the hell? I feel I see more and more stuff out in the world um, where the Me Too folks and the people arguing with each other on social media. I think, the great thing about social media, despite the fact that it's all going through this evil centralization stage, is that there's a tremendous amount of symmetry between the tweeter and the tweet reader that makes it harder to maintain the asymmetry of, oh my God, there's Walter Cronkite, he's super important, and I'm nobody, like that. No, it's just whoever it is tweeting, and then it's you tweeting, like that. And that, I think, has really driven an increased understanding of the way that things are, communications that are actually sort of incentive balanced or fair or something like that, because people are on both sides of it so much like that, rather than being the powerless versus the broadcaster versus the powerless recipient. And I think that's good. Despite everything, I think that's good. And I think it will lead to a resurgence of awareness of space, of stuff that's physically near you, stuff that you may physically control, being different than cloud crap, like that. And that we, it's the wheel of karma that rolls back and forth between centralization, where there's a mainframe and you just have a terminal with a green screen, to you have a personal computer, then you have a personal computer that's a Chromebook that's talking back to the center. And the wheel of karma goes back and forth like that. And I think, we're going to get ready to turn that wheel another time and have distributed hardware that's not just casually distributed for no reason at all, but it's distributed because it wants to be close to its owner. It wants to be close to its human, its person. And that's the way to do it. And we'll see. We'll see. It's up to the rising generations of computer scientists and computer engineers out there to figure out how to make that happen. Well, number one, and to want it, number one, and then to figure out how to make it happen, and then how to figure out how to pay for it in the society that we live in. So all our vast number of listeners out there, it's on y'all.
Yeah. The younger, the better.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, so you're now a month into your being a big government cheese. Is it going all right? Have you found the bathroom yet?
So I technically start in 2 weeks,
okay.
but I have a kind of a temporary position that so to help bridge in, so I can start off when I get there. So no, I don't have an office. I have a cube, which I have never sat in. Because mostly people aren't back yet from the pandemic.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would expect it would be a lot of that going forward. Well, but I'll want to hear about that in future discussions. All right, Michael. So I guess, should we call it?
I think so. We've been going for a while.
All right. Okay, folks. We'll talk again. This was Computing Up. Thanks for listening.